They were born as slaves, but they died as kings. They faced the wrath of the Mongols, the fury of the Crusaders, and the treachery of their own masters. They forged a dynasty that ruled over the lands of the Nile, the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, and the ancient wonders of Damascus and Jerusalem. They were the Mamluks, the slave warriors of medieval Islam, and their story is one of the most remarkable in history. Welcome to Bizarre History. Today we examine the insane story of Mamluks, the slave warriors. Mamluk means owned one in Arabic, reflecting their status as slaves purchased for military service. Drawn primarily from the Kipchak Turks of Central Asia and Circassians from the Caucasus, they were foreigners in the land they would come to rule. As custom dictated, Mamluks were severed from their kin. Sons could not inherit their father's possessions or property. Instead, the ranks were replenished by acquiring more slaves. This ensured the Mamluk regiments remained dominated by recent arrivals from the steppe. Culturally and strategically, they had more in common with the Mongol hordes than the settled peoples of Egypt and Syria. They maintained distinct garrisons and did not mix freely with the local population. So, it was apt when the Mamluks finally defeated the Mongols at Ain Jalut in 1260, the Arab chronicler Abu Shamud noted, "The people of the steppe have been destroyed by the people of the steppe." In the 13th century, young boys around the age of 13 would be captured from lands north of Persia to be trained as an elite fighting force for Muslim rulers. These boys, called Hulam in Arabic, meaning boy, were sent by the caliph or sultan to serve as enforcers of their rule, some as far as Spain. Despite papal prohibitions, Venice and Genoa facilitated the transportation of the Ghulam. Under their new masters, the boys were freed, converted to Islam, and subjected to rigorous military training to become fiercely loyal guards to the caliph. The Ghulam formed the foundations of the ruler's power. In the military society of medieval Islam, a ruler's might was measured by the size of his professional army. During the Mamluk Sultanate, struggles over succession were chiefly determined by the number of Ghulam a contender could muster. Having been stripped from their homeland, the Ghulam were wholly dependent on their master, binding them in unflinching loyalty. The interdependence between ruler and subject allowed the Mamluk state to weather tensions of tribalism and ambition. Great emphasis was placed on mastering Fuusia, the code of cavalry skills and chivalry. Like the Knight's Code in Christendom, Fuusia extolled virtues of courage, valor, generosity, and care for one's mount. But it also covered concrete skills, cavalry tactics, archery, horsemanship, armor, and battlefield medicine. Some texts even detailed military strategy and tactics. The Mamluks carefully preserved these teachings, producing beautifully illustrated manuals. The Fuusia bore the influence of the Mongols, incorporating motifs like lotuses and phoenixes carried westward through the Pax Mongolica. The codification of knighthood and military science helped hone the Ghulam into a potent fighting force, the backbone of the Mamluk rulers. In the heart of Mamluk politics, a tumultuous and ruthless power struggle raged. Mamluks, bound by the rule that they couldn't pass wealth or authority to their descendants, often defied this norm, sparking heated contests with each succession. Purges of rivals and lords were commonplace, and sultans resorted to gruesome punishments like impalement and crucifixion for those suspected of treachery or disloyalty. The life of a Mamluk revolved around war and unwavering allegiance to their master. They rarely ventured beyond their garrisons, and their pastimes bore an eerie resemblance to Vegetia's description of Roman military training as bloodless battles and battles as bloody drills. In the late 1240s, the Mamluks seized a chance to overthrow the Ayyubid rulers. The Ayyubids, who had reached an uneasy truce with the Crusader states, saw skirmishes instead of full-blown wars. Yet ominous events in the east where Mongols pushed westward were reshaping the region. In 1244, Jerusalem fell to the Khwarizmians, fleeing Mongol onslaughts in the east, with Cairo's tacit support. Louis IX of France initiated the Seventh Crusade, targeting Egypt's riches, hoping to secure control over Syria. Despite initial gains, Louis faced a catastrophic defeat at the hands of the Mamluk commander Baybars at Al-Mansuriya. Louis's fate hung in the balance as he sought aid from distant Mongols, believing them to be the legendary Christian king Prester John's forces. Az-Zhelal, the ruler of the Mamluks, had done much to promote their power during his reign. However, the Mamluks eventually forced Shagar ad-Dur to marry their commander Aibeg. Louis's crusade proved to be the catalyst for the Mamluks to finally dispense with their Ayyubid overlords. The Bahri Mamluk dynasty was set up in 1250, with Aibeg as his first sultan. However, Aibeg was later murdered in his bath on his wife's orders. More political murders followed, including the beating to death of Shagar ad-Dur, until Hutuz, the vice-regent, brought the factions bloodily under his control. In February 1258, the Mongol armies of Hulagu took Baghdad. The Mongols undertook a wholesale massacre. At least 250,000 were killed, but the intercession of Hulagu's wife spared the Nestorian Christians. Mongol troopers kicked al-Mustasim, the last Abbasid caliph and spiritual leader of Islam, to death after having rolled him in a carpet. The Mongols did not wish to spill royal blood directly. Aleppo fell almost as bloodily soon after, and it was widely reported that the Mongols used cats with burning tails sent running into the city to end the siege by fire. Damascus quickly capitulated, but one of those who escaped the Mongols was the Mamluk general Baybars, who had been instrumental in defeating them at Ain Jalut in 1260. Baybars I was a cunning and cruel leader who knew how to use politics and war to his advantage. He defeated the Mongols, who were the most powerful enemies of the Muslim world, and then attacked the Crusader cities in Syria, who were the most hated enemies of the Muslim faith. But he also made friends with some of his enemies, like Norman Sicily, who shared his culture and trade interests. He used the Assassins, a group of secret killers, to get rid of his rivals and opponents. He even tried to kill Edward I, the future King of England, when he came to Acre for a crusade in 1271. He pretended to respect the Abbasid Caliph, the spiritual leader of the Muslims, but he actually controlled him like a puppet and later sent him away to North Africa. He died in 1277, supposedly by drinking poisoned wine that was meant for someone else. This may not be true, but it shows how dangerous his life was. Baybars I was not only a skilled politician, but also a fierce warrior. He fought against two great threats to his empire, the Mongols and the Christians. The Mongols wanted to conquer Syria and Egypt, and they had their allies in Constantinople and Armenia. Baybars attacked them first, and then made an alliance with the Golden Horde, another group of Mongols who had converted to Islam. He also tried to stop the spread of Christianity in the Holy Land. He captured and destroyed many Christian cities and fortresses, such as Nazareth, Caesarea, Haifa, Arsuf, Athai, and Safed. He showed no mercy to the Christian soldiers and civilians, especially the Templars and Hospitallers, who were religious orders that fought against him. He wanted to wipe out all traces of Christianity from his lands. Baybars was apprehensive of a possible alliance between the Mongols and Christian powers. The Mongols attempted to establish this alliance, and in 1271, Edward Plantagenet convinced them to send a sizable force into Syria to reduce the Mamluk pressure on the remaining Crusader cities. However, after the failure of the crusade, the last cities soon fell. Tripoli was taken by the army of Sultan Qualawan, Baybars' successor, in 1289, and the Crusader settlement of Acre fell in 1291. This effectively made the Sultan coast an impossible beachhead for Christians. There would be no more Christian attempts to regain the Holy Land or Syria. The Mamluk dynasty was now secure and lasted until the 16th century. Even after the Circassian Burji Mamluk seized power from the Bahir Mamluks in the mid-14th century, factionalism and insecurity continued unabated. The Mamluks managed to re-establish their Syrian power base successfully by following Timur's brief but hugely destructive invasion in the early 1400s. However, the dynasty had been left weakened by the Black Death that had made repeated onslaughts through the Middle East from the mid-14th century. It soon lost the valuable trade revenues of Syria after the Portuguese opened up Europe's ocean trade and the route to India in the late 15th century. But their glory days came to an end when they faced a new enemy, the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans were an expanding Turkish dynasty that conquered most of the Middle East and North Africa. They had a modern army that used guns and cannons, while the Mamluks still relied on traditional weapons like bows and swords. In 1517, the Ottoman Sultan Selim I invaded Egypt with a large force. He met the last Mamluk army near Cairo, close to the ancient pyramids. The battle was short and brutal. The Mamluks were outnumbered and outmatched. They fought bravely, but they could not stop the Ottoman onslaught. Selim I crushed them and captured Cairo, ending the Mamluk rule. But he did not completely wipe out the Mamluks. He kept some of them as his governors and tax collectors. He also allowed them to recruit more soldiers from their homeland, Circassia. The Mamluks continued to play a role in Egyptian politics, but they also fought amongst themselves for power and influence. They could not restore their former glory, nor resist the changes that came with the new age. When Napoleon invaded Egypt in 1798, he found a divided and weak Mamluk society. If you want more of history's long-held secrets and darkest confessions, hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. From us at Bizarre History, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.